agriculture. All we have to do on item number J, major factors that keep the area out of Class 1 land, is to go back up to the top of our card, starting with surface texture, look at each of the factors and determine whether or not that would allow this land to be in Class 1. To help us do that, there are some pages here in the manual. On page 17, it says on Class 1 land, check factor 9, meaning that there are no factors to keep it out of Class 1 land. We always have to check something on the scorecard. We don't leave any of these categories blank. So if this land had nothing that kept it from being Class 1 land, we would simply check item number 9 underneath Part J, major factors that keep the area out of Class 1 land. Under surface texture, it says surface soil texture is a factor in sandy and clay textures. So basically we're saying if we have a very coarse or a very fine soil, that would be a factor. Permeability, depth, and so on are also described there. But what I find even more useful than that is the information that's provided for us over on page 19 of the manual. It says this is the general guide for selecting land capability classes. This we will utilize to help us complete parts J and K on the left-hand side of this land evaluation exercise. So under major factors that keep the area out of Class 1 land, if we look at surface texture, it gives us the best land class possible based on each of those 5 categories that we could have evaluated surface texture to be in. So for example, if our surface texture fit into the medium category, that allows it to be Class 1 land. If, however, our first surface texture was moderately fine, then our best land class possible is Class 2. Therefore, if our surface texture is moderately fine, we should have gone over to the first item on J, surface texture, and darkened the circle. So anything other than Class 1 land based on that particular evaluation criteria, we should darken the circle beside it. So on this exercise that I'm going through and giving you an example of right now, if surface texture were moderately fine, we would darken the circle beside that item, surface texture, underneath item J on our land evaluation card. Permeability, same situation. We want moderate permeability. That's the most desirable. If it's too rapid, we have low water holding capacities in the soil. If it's too slow, we obviously restrict intake and increase our potential for runoff and erosion. So underneath permeability, moderate would allow it to be Class 1. Any other permeability would be a factor in keeping it out of Class 1 land, and we would check item number 2, permeability, underneath the criteria that we're evaluating now that keep land out of capability Class 1. Our depth of soil. Anything other than deep would prevent this soil from being Class 1. It should be checked on underneath item J. So you can see that we're just taking each of these factors up above and running through them one at a time and determining whether or not that keeps this site from being capable or being in capability Class 1 for land. Our slope, the numbers up on the item E above are pretty much defined by capability class, and what I mean by that, 0 to 3% dry land and 0 to 2% irrigated allow it to be Class 1 land. Anything greater than that, slope should be checked under land. That would be a factor keeping it out of land capability class. Now what I would say about slope is also that when you're determining the eventual capability class for land, are we going to put this into Class 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it's going to be, slope is most often the deciding characteristic. It is often the most restrictive feature that puts land into a certain capability class. So we'd always look at slope first and then come back and look at other parameters to see if there's anything more restrictive than that. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I'm starting to talk about item number K, and I haven't completed item number J yet. So if we get back onto number J, erosion, none to slight allows it to be Class 1 land. Anything else would be a factor that keeps it out, so we should check it. Over on page 20, the stoniness. Of course, if it's a stony soil, that would definitely keep it out of Class 1. If it's non-stony, then it's not a factor. The flooding. On flooding, none or rare allows it to be in Class 1 land. Frequent or occasional, of course, would not allow this land to be suitable for the intended uses of Class 1 land, so we should check it. Then we hit the category that's called Other. Even though we've evaluated all of these characteristics, A through I, above, there could still be other factors that would not allow this land to be in Class 1. We need to evaluate each of these factors. Most often, this falls into one of two criteria, either rainfall or the length of the growing season, growing degree days. Well, we're only at this site today for 1 day, so how do we know that? Well, we go back to our site card. On our site card, as you'll recall, when we went through that, two pieces of information that were given to us was the length of the growing season, the number of frost-free days, and the amount of average annual precipitation. So we simply take that information off of the site card, refer to this page 20 in our manual, and we look under frost-free days, and we see that there's some parameters there. It has to be 140 days or greater to be Class 1. Anything less than 140 days, we would check the category Other. We don't have to designate why, we simply check the Other category. Or if, for example, we were at less than 18 inches of annual precipitation, we would also check the Other category on this one, because that would be a factor that would keep this from being in Class 1 land. So less than 18 inches of annual precipitation or less than 140 days, growing season or frost-free days, the Other category would be checked. Other things that could possibly cause us to check item number 8 on Other, on factors that keep it out of Class 1 land, are described there, things such as a seasonably high water table, which would, of course, restrict the utilization of this site for cultivated cropping. So we've gone through all of the factors that could be considered or are considered in determining the capability class for the land. As you go through the items 1 through 8 on item number J, major factors that keep it out of Class 1 land, I would recommend that beside each of those that you check, meaning it's not eligible for Class 1 land, you write down the land capability class that is possible with that factor. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, that you had surface texture and that kept it out of Class 1 land, but it allowed it to be Class 2, I would write a Class 2 beside that. If slope allowed this land to be in Class 3, the best possible class was Class 3, I would write Class 3 beside slope because I would have that circle darkened. Then when you do that, you get to item number K in determining the actual capability class for the land. That particular evaluation you've already done, because you simply go up to item number J and take the most restrictive feature. In other words, if several of these features allowed it to be Class 2, but one of them put it into Class 4, then that land capability class is indeed Class 4. So item number K, land capability class, is determined on the most restrictive feature that you've just evaluated on item number J above. That's a very, very important criteria to get correct. If you miss item number K, the land capability class, you will automatically miss several of the criteria that you evaluate on Part 2, the right-hand side of the scorecard. Next, we'll be going into the right-hand side of the scorecard and looking at our soil and our water conserving practices that we would recommend based upon our determination of land capability class.